I read the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. You know, Guild, Glint, Gleam. The names are very similar, but those. Well, to be more specific and quite forward with it, I only read the first 3 because when I got into the series, I did not know it is a 6-book series. And that's okay. I'm not usually the biggest fan of long series like that because at some point it just kind of feels like it's getting carried out longer than it needs to be. So it kind of stressed me out about the same, like, oh my god, I have 3 books left, or I have 4, I have 3, continuing counting down. And that's kind of on my part because I have a problem of I will look up spoilers in the book. I like knowing what's gonna happen in the book, and then I can like see how that happens. It's just how I function. I've always liked it. Back to the actual series at hand. This is the first book, the only one I have a physical copy of. The rest are on my lovely Kindle behind me. I can't move because my camera can't focus. That's my bad. So it opens up following our girl, Auren. Auren. So I'm gonna say it's Auren. But she is, as the book would call, a gold-touched saddle, meaning, one, she's literal gold, and we're gonna find out why that's important later, and she's the saddle of King Midas, because this is a King Midas story retelling, who can touch and turn things to gold. If you don't know the thing of the story of Midas, and what we are told is that she is his favored, so he gold touched her and her skin is literal gold. What we learn is we have King Midas, who is the ruler of what we call the Sixth Kingdom in Auria, like the entire continent, which is split into 6 kingdoms. Or there used to be a 7th one, which is the Land of the Fae, but we'll learn more about that later. But 6 kingdoms, and he is the king of the 6th kingdom. And they live in a castle called Highbell Castle. And then we also meet his wife, Queen Melina, who has no magic of her own, and that's why she married Midas, because in their, like, politics, she was raised, like, her family has been the entire rulers of the 6th kingdom, but she didn't have any magic, and you can't rule the kingdom unless you have magic, so she married Midas, who had the gold-touching magic, to become queen and stay in the castle, but now she's kind of, like, ranked below him, even though her family was, like, the big deal, but she's ranked below him because she doesn't have the magic. And Queen Melina does not like Auren at all, and some other people who don't like Auren are the other, King Midas's other saddles, who aren't gold touched, so they all stay in like a room together and are very close knit, while Auren is kept like in the high stakes of it in a literal cage. She has gold bars throughout the room, like, and walkways between it, but a literal cage, while the rest of the saddles stay together. And we learn they don't like her just because it's like she's a favored, kind of jealous, but not really jealous. It's more just like they think she's very entitled, which in the situation she's been placed in, you can understand that. So they don't like her. And King Midas obviously doesn't care that they don't like her. But the one person who does like Auren, or never like says it, but like the closest thing she has to a friendship while she's in the castle is her personal guard, who like stays in a room, named Digby. We love Digby. So anyway, we start in the castle, and it kind of opens up with a deal between King Midas and the ruler of 5th Kingdom, King Folk. And it's like if Midas gives King Folk Auren for like one night, King Folk will then lend his army to fight alongside King Midas to go attack 4th Kingdom, who is ruled by King Ravager. I know it's info dumping, but it doesn't really make more sense later on. It's just you get used to the characters. But attack King Ravager in Fourth Kingdom because he's been like encroaching on territories and he has the power to literally rot things. So they're kind of like scared of him in the power he has. And they accept this deal. And Oren, this is the first like sign of betrayal by Midas she ever faces, because he like sold her just for an army, and he keeps telling her to like just trust her, just trust me, King Midas. She's mad. We see some sign of rebellion. It's like the first signs of fighting. But blah blah blah. Deal goes on. She's angry. At the end of the deal, what actually happens was it was all one big ploy to kill King Folk, ruler of Fifth Kingdom, so Midas can begin to rule Fifth Kingdom and Sixth Kingdom. Because, like, Fourth Kingdom, what they were attacking, is way too strong, and King Midas knew that from the beginning, and he never actually planned to attack them. So what he ended up doing was, like, saying, we'll combine our forces and attack Fourth Kingdom, but his forces never joined, so it only was Fifth Kingdom army going to attack Fourth Kingdom, and they get demolished. And so what that allows Midas to do is he goes, without the army there, he goes and takes Fifth Kingdom and kills Folk in the process, and sets it up as a big thing as like, oh, we were big allies, and King Ravager with his nasty rot powers killed King Folk or something like that. So, but we were allies, so you need to follow me in King Fifth and like rallying the troops over there to try to like solidify himself as ruler over there. And it's successful. His plan works. So yeah, King Midas is now in control of both Sixth Kingdom. Did this turn off? No, it didn't. Both in control of Sixth Kingdom and Fifth Kingdom. While King Ravager at Fourth is mad. Reasonably mad, because he just got attacked. But anyway, so Midas is over at Fifth now. He left early to like make sure the path was safe for Oren or whatever. And so majority of the first book after that is just Oren traveling with the rest of the saddles and the army, just like over across like icy blizzards and snow, and just very unsafe because they live in the cold climates. So the entire rest of the book essentially follows her traveling there. And while she's going, she makes another friend. Good for her. Sail, a soldier. But on the way there, we learn that the rest of Hybel, Sixth Kingdom, even though King Midas can literally turn things to gold, he's too greedy, and the rest of the kingdom is actually like living in intense poverty, which will come into play in the third book again. Or is it the second book? It will just come and play later. But, so we learned that, and while they're on their way, Oren and the rest of the saddles and like half the soldiers get, like abducted by snow pirates. Like, because they don't go on water, they go on snow. But, which we learn, later on, but I'll just tell you now, which we learn was actually, like, they were paid to do that as like mercenaries by Queen Melina. Remember, the queen of the wife of Midas who hates Oren. Anyway, they were abducted by snow pirates, and they kill Sail, which obviously upsets Oren. That was like her first friend. I don't know how but of course she's upset. And Oren, again, upset, gets him down and throws him over the edge just so he can get away. And she does this by what we learned earlier on, but she has 24, what she calls ribbons hanging off her back, like, essentially, like, sentient limbs. Like, she controls them, but they also have their mind of their own, but just 24 ribbons hanging out on her back that are pretty strong, and she uses them to, like, rip Sail down and throw him over the edge. In a more respectful way, of course. The captain of the ship gets upset and is, like, dragging her down to his room to punish her. But on the way, we get a message that Commander Rip, the commander under King Rot, again, Fourth Kingdom, is, like, intercepted his message to sell them off to the highest bidder and is coming to their ship to sell, like, backtracking, to sell the saddles off to the highest bidder. So Commander Rip intercepted that message and is going to the ship and is going to buy all the saddles and the rest of the army and everything and, like, take them under. So what happens is Commander Rip gets there. They make a deal. Commander Rip pays the Snow Pirates, and the Snow Pirates give him the rest of the, like, people from Sixth Kingdom to go over. But before he does that, the Snow Pirate captain takes Oren and another saddle named Risa to his bedroom against their will. I'm just gonna say that. And we learn something very important, and that is Oren actually has the ability to turn things solid gold. So which is the big plot twist of the first book, what we think is King Midas's power, and that he, like, gold touched her, but he has the power to turn things gold. It's actually, he gets all that power. He just has Oren do it all for him, because Oren is actually a Fae, like I just said. So she offs the Snow Pirate captain. I don't remember his name. It doesn't really matter. And she makes it look like he just ran away with the gold from Commander Rip. And Risa sees this whole debacle. But Risa, what she thinks happens is that since, like, Oren spent so much time around King Midas and he gold touched her, that Oren just took some of his ability. So she doesn't know. Risa does not know that it's actually Oren is the one who has all the power. And she agrees to keep her mouth quiet for a short period of time. They escape that thanks to Oren. And as they're leaving, about to get away, like, the second in command of the Snow Pirates, like, catches them and is about to interrogate them and catch on to their little scheme. But then Commander Rip shows up and, like, stops it before it gets out of hand, and takes Risa and Oren, who are the last two people from Sixth Kingdom, to his ship as an agreed upon deal. And that's essentially where the first book ends off. I mean, there's, like, a little tiny moment between Oren and Commander Rip at the end of the first book, but it's not really important because we don't really know who Commander Rip is yet. When you read the book, it's fairly obvious, but I don't know if it was obvious to me because I could actually, like, figure it out, or if I, like, watched it from another video and it was just kind of in the backtrack of my mind. But if you read the book, at least from what I think, it's fairly obvious who Commander Rip is. We also learn that he, as well, is Fae, along with Oren, and they're, like, the last two Fae in all of Auria, the big continent, because what happened, a little bit of, like, world building here, is, you know how I said there were 6 kingdoms? Well, there used to be a 7th, and that was, like, Anwin, and that was, like, the land of Fae. But then something happened, and, like, the bridge connecting to the 2 worlds got, like, completely destroyed, and Oren was, like, kidnapped and taken over to Auria from Anwin. But, like, essentially, now what we're led to believe in the first 3 books is that, like, 7th Kingdom, all Fae, it doesn't really exist anymore, and the Fae have long since been gone, like, full-blooded Fae. But the powers that remain in humans and things is kind of just, like, from the ancestors, but that's why magic's kind of dimming, and you need to have the magic to rule. So, what happens is, now Oren is on the ship with 4th Kingdom. Yeah, Commander Rip. And so are the rest of the saddles and the remaining soldiers from 6th Kingdom. And they're kind of, like, striking up a deal with Midas. They're going to go meet Midas. And Oren believes that they're, like, going to use her as, like, a hostage almost, or, like, try to sneak attack them. So she's like, I gotta warn King Midas on the way there. We learn that's not true. They let King Midas know immediately right away that they had him and they were going to meet him. But Oren doesn't know that. So the entire second book is just them going to go meet King Midas. And throughout the second book, we meet a lot of new characters because we meet her friends in 4th Kingdom. We have Commander Rip, and then 3 of his Wrath. Well, there's only 3 people in his Wrath. So you meet his entire Wrath, which is Lou, like the female commander of right flank. I don't remember any of the other flanks. That's the one thing. That's what I remember of Lou, though. And this is like and that's important though too, because seeing Lou is the first time Oren learns that like a woman can have like be a warrior and be in charge of herself, because she's always been told what to do by King Midas, essentially, except for like the 15 years she lived on the streets. But we meet Lou. We meet Osric, which is originally is very threatening in the book, and he like threatens her, but then they become friends. And he's a big dude, even bigger than Commander Rip. And then we also meet Judd, which, to be honest, I don't really remember anything remarkable about Judd, except for he has yellow mustard hair, because they keep calling him Mustard. Or she just calls him that in her head. I don't really remember, but there's nothing really remarkable about him. And she's, like, slowly becomes friends with all of them. And blah, blah, blah. She doesn't trust Commander Rip. There's an awkward moment where instead of treating Oren as, like, a prisoner, they put her in the tent with Commander Rip so he can watch over her. And she's, like, changing, and he walks in and then walks back out, and he sends in a healer because she got, like, kicked in the side, I think, by the Snow Pirate Captain. Nothing really important, but we meet the healer, who's not also nicer. Don't really remember his name. And he's not super important, but it's just more of the fact of the amount of people being nice to her, even though it's still relatively small. She never experienced that in back with Midas, because he didn't let anybody touch her or see her, because of like her, like I said, since she turns things to gold during the daytime, if any of her bare skin comes into contact with something, she will gild it. Speaking of gild, Lou gives her the nickname Gildilocks. So they call her Gildy a lot, and it catches on. But my one question about that is Gildilocks is obviously based off Goldilocks. And I get, like, when she gilds something, she turns it to gold. But she's also gold, so why wouldn't she just still be Goldilocks? Why does it have to be Gildy? Not really important, but it was making me think. My brother is here. Yeah, so she meets his Wrath. She meets the Mender. My brother's playing guitar. The Mender, which is the healer, like I said, who's being nice to her. And she also meets, one of my favorite characters is, like, the army cook named Keg. And he immediately, he's, like, putting her first, making her comfortable. Again, being nice to her, which she's not really used to. And they'll become important somewhat, kind of just as connections of characters that we're gonna bring up later on. But other than, like, and she gets into this, like, fight circle, which, if you read the second book, the fight circle scene, I had to skip over half of it, because I was, like, secondhand embarrassment. And usually, if I get secondhand embarrassment, I can be like, it's not real, babe, just read it. But I genuinely had to, like, skim over the first half of it, because I'm like, that's so embarrassing. But we get into the fight circle, and Commander Rip is like, you can't leave unless you fight. So he makes her fight, which isn't fair. He's a literal commander of an army, and she has been stuck in a cage her whole life. And I guess he wants to find the fight in her. But what does he expect her to do? Again, embarrassing for me. And I'm not even in the scene. But yeah, he says, you can't leave unless you fight. So he makes her fight him. And, like, use her ribbons to show, like, you need to fight for yourself. Which, true. All true. But, like, again, she does not know how to fight. The rest of his Wrath are fighting while they fight each other. While Commander Rip and Oren fight each other. And he makes her, like, I'm at it. She's like, I'm Faye. And, like, yells it to the rest of the Wrath. And Commander Rip, like, that's my girl. Or something like that. Because he's also Faye. I said this before, but he's Faye. And part of his Fayness, you know how, like, Oren has the ribbons? Well, he has literal spikes coming out of him. And, like, scales on his cheeks, I think. And it's described as, like, people call him hideous. But it's because they can't accept the Fae ethereal beauty. Which is, like, okay, sure. But again, literal spikes and scales. But to each their own. I mean, I looked up pictures. he's not ugly. I'll say that. Back on track. So yeah, they're both Fae. He makes her yell it out loud, and it's the first time of like her admitting it to herself since she like was taken out of Anwen, Seventh Kingdom, Kingdom of the Fae. That, and the rest of the Wrath hear it, and as she looks around, she's like, "Oh my god, did they hear?" And he's like, "Yeah, but I trust them, so it's fine." And she's like, "Okay." She moves on right away, and they build up trust. They arrive at, oh my god, brain freeze. They arrive at where they were going, Fifth Kingdom, to meet up with King Midas, that's right. And Commander Rip gives her the choice of, like, do you want to stay with the Fourth Kingdom, with us? Like, we know how you like it, and you don't like King Midas, you realize in the freedom, and she's like, yeah, but I can't, I'll always choose Midas. And then they're all upset about that, and she does choose Midas, but she's like, he'll listen to me, I swear. Which, like, sure, I mean, good thought, good intentions. I'm playing with my hair on that viewfinder. Good intentions, but they're upset that she decided to leave, but she's like, she doesn't want them to be mad, and honestly, with the history of what she was saved up from by Midas, you can't really blame her in this case. I mean, later on, we find more information, but in this case, it's like, she spent her entire life with him, you can't just expect it, like, after a month or so, to be like, yep, screw Midas, I want to stay with you. Like, and she's also, like, trying to stop a full-out war breaking out, which is, I think, is a pretty good, a good reason. She goes up to the room to meet Midas, like, they give her off, and they're like, remember, and Lugh tells her, like, remember, you can fight, don't stay under their thumb. And it's a sweet little moment between Midas, and then he's like, okay, get back in the cage, I got to go talk to, Commander Rip, and King Ravager, who just arrived up, because I forgot to mention, but when Fourth Kingdom showed up on the ship, King Ravager also came, and it was like the entire kingdom of Fourth meeting with Midas at Fifth. Well, but she's like, but I don't want to get in the cage. It's, again, a literal bird cage. That's silver because she hasn't gilded it yet. And he's like, don't do this for me right now. I know you're scared. I know you've been through a lot, but get in the cage. And she's like, no. And he tries to, like, push her in it. She accidentally gilds poor, like, servant girl and kills her. She uses her ribbons to, like, fling off the door of the cage, but not, and this is her trying to convince him to let it go before it broke. Like, she's like, please don't put me in there. I've changed. I can protect myself. I get this for my safety, but I want to stay out. I want freedom. Which, who doesn't? So she tried talking it to him, but he doesn't. It just goes right over Midas's head, and he tries to lock her in it. Like I said, she breaks the cage, but as she's about to run out, he locks the door straight up and puts all the guards there so she can't get out. So she's locked in the room, even though she begged him not to and thought she could convince him. This is her realizing, oh my god, he does not care for me at all. She experienced freedom and kindness and all that in Fourth, and Midas only wants her for the wealth, because he's a greedy little man. But yeah, that happens. So she's in there, she's banging on the door and yelling. Meanwhile, King Midas is having, like, a meeting with King Ravager where they agree that Fourth Kingdom will not attack Fifth Kingdom and kind of Sixth Kingdom by extension if they give him, like, the Dreadlands. I don't remember what it was called, but, like, this little tiny slip of land that's between the kingdoms. And King Ravager's reasoning is, well, you're saying I'm encroaching on territories and I'm rotting everything, and I did it to that, so why not just give it to me? And that's obviously, like, there's obviously more deeper reasoning below it, but that's what we're given. And Midas is like, okay, because he doesn't, as much as he sucks, he can't risk a full-out war at that point in time, because, again, it is known throughout the kingdom that, like, Fourth Kingdom is the strongest army. They can just, like, annihilate people, especially with King Rot's ability to rot things. It's agreed upon that, like, Fourth Kingdom's gonna stay in Fifth Kingdom until Third Kingdom arrives at a ball, because there's 6 kingdoms in total. So Commander Rip and King Ravager and all of Fourth Army are gonna be, like, staying, including the Wrath, are be staying in Fifth Kingdom for a short period. of time. God, it's now that I'm like it felt like really nothing happened, but now that I'm trying to recap all of it off the top of my head, it's a lot of work because I'm probably talking about things that are not important, but it matters to me. So how second book ends is Oren is still banging in a room, but then King rots all the guards outside. He kills like 6 guards, but King Rot breaks in. And he's meeting Oren for the first time. He's like, I think we're gonna grow quite acquainted, Goldfinch. And she's like, Commander Rip told you the nickname. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, I thought you knew who I was. And we learn, which was kind of obvious, like I said before, Commander Rip and King Ravager are the same person. What? Yeah, they're the same person, and that's why King Rot has such, like, that, all that mighty rotting power, because he's literally, again, he's the full blooded Flay, so he's the power to rot things. And what the world had believed was just, like, he passed some of his rotting power on to Commander Rip, and that's why he had the spikes and everything. That's kind of was his guise of hiding under his Fae, and he's like, and she's like, well, how do people not notice it? And he's like, people are gonna believe what they want to believe, and they don't want to believe that Fae exist, so they just accept the story that King rotted Commander Rip and gave him the spikes and everything. But no, they're the same person, and it's just kind of, he has 2 different forms, like his spiky commander form when he has like black eyes because all the rot is all the rot magic is inside of him. And then there's King Ravager, who has green eyes because he like lets his rot magic free, and it like seeps out of his eyes and makes like little like roots on his neck or something. I don't know, man. I don't know anymore. That is the end of the second book. So, I'm back. My camera battery died, so I had to wait about an hour or so for it to recharge. But like I said, it's good now. I'm gonna finish explaining book 3, Gleam, I believe. And here's the thing about book 3. Right, it is like almost 700 pages. It's like 668 or something. So it's a long book, and so you would think by extension my explanation is going to be long, and it might be because I have a tendency to just continue talking. A lot of planning, if you want to call it that, but nothing really happening. So it was quite a ride, just waiting for it to finish. I had it on my Kindle in the tiniest text trying to go through it. But anyway, so how book 2 ends off and leading into book 3 is, one, like, Oren is now like, oh yeah, King Midas, he's a little liar. He's actually not a good guy. And we learned that Commander Rip and King Ravager, same person, connecting together. And that, I mean, there's a little travel time where it's just the 4th kingdom in 5th kingdom until the 3rd kingdom gets there. Some stuff does happen before that. Not a lot, but some stuff. So, as a big, like, over cap, so Mist, I never brought her up before, but there's a saddle named Mist, and she is pregnant with King Midas's baby. I don't think I said this either, but during the second book, Queen Melina, while King Midas was at 5th Kingdom, Queen Melina was, like, trying to gather resources and take back control of Highbell, which is 6th Kingdom. And now in the 3rd book, it's going down the drain, essentially. Like, she tries to, like, win over the peasants by just giving out gold, but then again, that doesn't fix, what they say is, it does not fix the root cause of the poverty of, they have all this gold, but people are still gonna live in poverty and, like, need, and cold and all this, and the temporary gifts aren't gonna do anything, which is true. So she instantly kind of, like, loses favor like that, and you can see Queen Melina's power start to crumble. But she also meets, like, this guy who is, like, a Lord Pruin. I think his name's Lord Pruin. And he's, like, a traveling merchant who, like, reveals, he's like, I can show what you greatest desire to get to your greatest desire or something. And so she, like, holds his hand and uses magic. And what is, like, given is a map to the Seventh Kingdom, which is destroyed, but it was the land of, like, the Fae. And she's like, but this is destroyed. Your magic is obviously fake. And he's like, but is it? And they just do this back and forth where we obviously, as a reader, we're like, well, it's probably not then. It's probably not destroyed. Like, it's setting up if you're making this big of a deal about it. But I digress. We don't really know that. I technically don't know that because I only stopped at the third book. But, calculated guess, you can call it. So, Mist, Melina. What's happening with Oren, really, is she's just kind of plotting with Risa. Oh, yeah. Also, she's planning with Risa, the girl who saw her told turn the man on the ship to solid gold and kill him. They're planning, like, a big escape to sneak out during a ball. So they're kind of, like, reluctant allies, but then they'll kind of become friends. And this is what I was going at. So, like, a few days before Third Kingdom arrives, King Midas is having, like, her Oren turn everything gilded, because she was, like, she needs to make up on her work, and she's kind of been, like, I don't want to do it, or, like, that's kind of her only power over him, so she wasn't really doing that, and I don't remember the exact order, but the only reason she starts doing it is because we learned that Digby, her guard from, like, book 1, who we thought was, like, dead almost in book 2, Midas actually has Digby captured and is, like, torturing him each time she doesn't follow his rules, essentially. So now she is listening to him, and her little, like, act of rebellion in his eyes is going down, but in her head she's still like, well, now it's just confirming even more. She's like, I'm gonna run away from you, solidifying it, even though she's like, I don't want to run away from Rip. I don't want to run away from Rip, but we all know she's gonna run away. So yeah. But anyway, he had her, like, gilding everything and turning everything to gold, and she, like, drains her power, so she's going up to his rooms, but she's, like, collapsing because she used all her power. But the guards who are escorting her, everyone has, like, strict instructions. They can't touch her because her bare skin, like, gilds stuff, and Midas doesn't want that power leaking out, or that, like, realization. Power in both physical and information. So nobody's allowed to touch her, so she's just kind of, like, collapsing on the stairs, and they're like, my lady, stand up! And so the only person to help her is, Commander Rip, or King Ravenger, or, as we also learned, his name is Slade. So, recap, Commander Rip, Slade, Rot, King Ravenger. All the same person. So he carries her to the room, essentially. They, like, kiss or whatever. But Midas found out he touched her because he had to carry her. And so, as, like, a thing, during the dinner with the Third Kingdom's queen, he tells Oren to, like, go play the harp. But again, even though she's, like, willing to do some stuff for Digby, she still doesn't really want to listen to Midas, so she refuses. But he's like, you need to go play the harp. So he he can't technically force it, but in, like, a politics play, he makes fake Commander Rip, because he has a fake, because King Ravenger has, like, a fake stand-in. Slade has a fake stand-in as Commander Rip, since he's technically he's both Commander Rip. Oh my god. So Slade is both King Ravenger and Commander Rip, but when he's presenting as King Ravenger, he needs a stand-in for Commander Rip. So, as a power play, King Midas makes fake Commander Rip, like, carry her over to a harp, and she's just like, that's embarrassing! But really nothing comes of it. It's just, like, him showing his power over her and everyone, and her just being like, I thought Slade promised he'd always take my side, and yet he let his soldier carry me over to a harp. I'm making her sound so whiny, and it's just more because I'm annoyed about the book. I'm sure, really, throughout the book, she's kind of finding her inner, like, fight, which is a really empowering story if you look at it that way. I'm just more looking at it as a book that was 500 pages too long, and 3 books too long in the series that I'm not gonna read, so I can't even really complain about that because I'm not reading it. Anyway, I digress. So, ball's over. We meet Queen Kayla, and more plotting, more scheming. Throughout this, Oren is kind of like training her ribbons as well. At one point, so her and Slade finally admit to each other, they're like, yeah, I love you. And if we're going to be all in, we're going to be all in with each other. So they admit that, and then the next night, Lou sneaks Oren out to go to the camp and, like, talk with all of them. And then as they're sneaking back, so as Lou is sneaking Oren back in the castle, Queen Kyla spots them and kind of, like, dismisses Lou. And so now Queen Kyla and Oren are alone, just walking around, and they go to, like, this, I forgot what it's called, but it's like these big lion birds that can fly. Not a griffin, but something else. And they're talking. And so the queen kind of makes all these, like, vaguely threats at Oren, because the queen also wants power, wants to secure power just as much as Midas. And so they're like, so she reveals how Queen Kyla reveals how she and Midas are actually going to get married. And she's like, Oren, if you don't get out of the picture, I'll kill you. I'll also try to kill Mist or something like that. And she's like, I'll kill whoever I need to, and that's what makes me a good queen. And also, a little side note, the queen has her own magic, because she has that magic to rule. And her ability is, like, she manipulates, like, voices and sounds, so she can pull voices to her, mute it, like, replay it, stuff like that. And so as a little, like, blackmail hanging over it is the queen heard Oren's conversation with Lou about how she was just hanging out with Slade and how he is so much better than King Midas, the golden prick, and kind of uses that as just blackmail, another thing to emphasize the threat. But yeah, and hearing that the queen is actually, like, not probably going to be her ally, and that she's going to try to kill her if she doesn't get out of the picture, and kill Mist and the baby, Oren runs over to Mist to warn her, like any good person would. But Mist is one of the strong Oren haters among the Saddles. And so even though Oren tries her best to warn her, and it looks like she gets through, as we get back, like, the very next day, Midas, and it looks like, yeah. So Oren tries to warn Mist. But Mist is like, get out. So Oren begins to leave, and it looks like she finally broke through to Mist a little bit, but we don't know. And then it cuts forward to the next day in Oren's room, and she's like, I need to tell everybody this information, and how she needs to tell Risa how Slade agreed that he could help sneak them out, and also tell Slade about King Midas's plans and the queen's plans to get married and kill people. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, Queen Melina has been, like, completely, the citizens have thrown a riot, and so Queen Melina is, like, out hiding in a safe house, completely out of power. And Midas actually sent someone to kill her. They're not successful, but Midas doesn't know that. So everybody thinks Queen Melina is dead at this point, and she's like, and I need to tell Slade that too because of the letter. So as she's walking out, about to send a messenger, ask to have tea with Risa, the king's like, that's actually not important. I have some more stuff for you to gild. So he has her gilding everything, and again draining her power, and she fully agrees to do it, because this time he says, I'll let you see Digby after you do it. And so she's doing this, she drains it, but she's not complaining because she wants to see Digby. And he's like, before you go, you should regain your energy. So he has her eat a bunch of food, and it's nighttime now, so she can touch it. But what happens is he ends up drugging her and dragging her to the dungeons that are the dungeons that Digby is staying in. Another side note, throughout this book, we've learned about a drug named dew, a drug named dew, which is, I think it's an aphrodisiac, but I don't know if that's referring to the person, but it's like, it's in that general field. So she's heavily drugged up, but she's still fighting Midas. She's like, I'm not going to give in, I'm not going to give in. And as a punishment for that, King Midas cuts off all her ribbons. And as she explains it, it's like, this ribbons are attached to her soul. She, like, blacks out from so much pain, and it's like, it ruins her mentally. And she's stuck in the dungeons with Digby, who is heavily tortured because Orin was disobeying the rules by King Midas. But, yeah, and so she blacks out. And, really, she stays like that, and she keeps getting more and more drugs. Like, she's, like, at the point she's not even coherent. Until the day of the ball, when she was gonna, like, run away with Slade, and they had all those plans, but she can't really remember any of them because she's so drugged up. And he's having her guild stuff, and she's not even realizing she's guilding stuff. Like, it's bad. Girlie has it bad. But the king orders, like, Polly, another saddle who despises Orin, to, like, watch over her and amp her up on dew. But, like, something happens to where Orin doesn't get her due, isn't getting drugged, so slowly her memories are starting to come back, and she manages to tell Risa to just leave without her and take Polly with her, because Polly was Risa's best friend who was going to come along, because Risa really wanted her out of there. I love Risa throughout this book. She was honestly one of my favorite characters. Not important, but thought you'd want to know. So yeah. She tells him to escape, but then she was gonna guild something for, like, an interest for Queen Kyla, but her memory is coming back more and more, and she decides not to do it. And so Midas is like, you almost ruined everything. And she's like, I'm never gonna do it. I'm gonna run away. She makes this a big, big threat. Honestly, kind of cool. But then it turns nighttime, and her power vanishes, because the gilding power isn't following, it only works during the day, and she also has no ribbon, so in this point she's kind of powerless. And we have a big plot twist that honestly I didn't see coming. And you need to read the book for yourself for the flashbacks and everything, because I didn't really talk about the flashbacks to get more impactfulness from this plot twist. But we learned that King Midas was actually, like, Baron East. He was, like, a flesh trader back in the city that she used to live when she was, like, 15 years old. And she ran away from him. But we learned that. And so now Orin is, like... And I know I kept saying this, that she's like, this is it. This is when she decides to do it. But this is really actually the breaking point, because the only thing in her mind she had going for Midas was that he saved her from a very young age. But her learning that him saving her was an entire setup by him, she's like, yeah, screw him, honestly. And so when he does his big plan to, like, set up to kill Prince Niven, who was the son of King Folk from the first book, so, like, the rightful heir to to the Fifth Kingdom. So when Midas does the big ploy to kill Niven, the prince, and frame Slade for it, she steps in and completely, like, shuts it down and throws off all his plans. And he wasn't expecting it, and she kind of puts him in, like, a stalemate to where he can't really act the way he wants to because he's out in public. And so she's like, so let me go. And the queen who is already threatening Orin to leave is like, yeah, just let her go. She deserves to be with the Fourth Kingdom. Little does she know that the Fourth Kingdom are actually the good guys and not completely terrible people. Yeah, so he's like, fine, you can leave. And begin to leave, but obviously he can't let Orin leave because she guilds stuff and is his entire source of power. And so with a big switch, he, like, holds a knife up to Orin's throat. Almost the exact same, actually, as what happened in the very first book with King Folk. But now, instead of King Folk, it's King Midas. And he says, like, if I can't have her, no one can, because she's a source of power. Without her, he has nothing, because everything he has is built on a lie based on around her. And he says, like, Slade, if you step one closer, I'll kill her, and so you and your Wrath need to leave. And Slade can't do anything because he obviously won't risk Orin's life, and Orin can't do anything because it's nighttime, she doesn't have gilding powers, and her ribbons are cut off. And so it looks a little cooked for Orin, but what ends up happening, kind of a girl boss moment for her, is, so everything she's gilded, like, everything she turned gold, she has control over. That is her gold. And her little beast inside of her that she keeps referring to as, like, a bird, the goldfinch, her, symbolic of her anger, it, like, snaps, and she snaps with it. Her magic, like, finally getting fully released. Whoa, can I talk? So now her magic's on a rampage, and she's like, I want everybody to hurt I want everyone to hurt the way I've hurt, and she kills essentially all of King Midas's army, and then eventually King Midas himself, because she is melting the gold, has gold spikes shooting through, has, like, it devouring people, a big wave, and she has this big thing where she has it slowly, like, has Midas turn to gold slowly by slowly so he can feel all the bit of torture she's went through by him. And it's really good for her, but then she is so, like, the magic is so taken over her that she can't even think properly, and she doesn't realize that the magic is actually, like, draining her until Slade steps in front of her. And actually, at the very beginning, she doesn't even recognize it's Slade until he, like, caresses her cheek or something. And he's like, you gotta let go, baby. You gotta let go. Which is so weird to me. Because hardly, I mean, maybe a few times, but hardly in the book does he call her baby or love, and then you just spew that out in the middle. That, to me, that just makes it kind of like, okay, calm down. Let's not. But he's like, you gotta calm down. You don't realize it. But the magic is draining your aura, because they can see each other's aura. Which is so funny to me, because all I can think of is when people are like, how much aura did I lose when I did this? And that is so stupid. I don't even know why I was thinking about it, but I was so incoherent at the end of the book, because it never ended until it finally did. And so what happens is she's like, I can't let go, it'll kill you, I can't let go of the magic. So, and she's gonna die. And he's like, but I'm not leaving here without you. So, to prevent her from, like, letting herself die so he can escape, King Ravager Slade rots her into what he calls, because at the very end we have the epilogue from his POV, what he calls a state of, like, of not between life or death, but she's just, like, sitting there kind of halfway, so he can get her away from all the gold, and the magic can't overtake her. But also, at the same time, he unrotted people from the beginning, and so he's like, I'm focusing so hard to keep him in the middle, but, like, he unrotted the people at the very beginning. I don't understand why he doesn't just, like, he's not just, like, killing her, essentially, and then just bringing her back. I know that sounds dark, but, like, she was about to let herself die, and he knows he could bring her back to life. So, even though that was revealed to us, I don't know why it was such an emphasis on, like, the state of mitosis, or, that's biology. What is it? That ain't mitosis. This balance between life and death, I'll call it that. And he and the Fourth Kingdom leave with her to take her away from the gold while she's just kind of, like, unconscious because he rotted her. And that's how the third book ends. The one part I'm kind of interested in is how Queen Melina can take back power. But that's funny to say, is when I was reading it, I'm not interested. I like skimmed Queen Melina's chapters, and like I said at the very beginning, is I know what's gonna happen in the fourth book. Like, Orin's obviously gonna be brought back, and so that the cliffhanger of, is he gonna like save her? Yes. There's 3 more books. You think she's just gonna die? No. Well, it's obvious. So, for all of the reasons that above, like I'm writing an essay. But no, for those reasons, I think I'm done with the series. Well, for the first 3 books, 3 stars for that entire thing, not individually. Individually, I think I also rated the second and third books 2 stars. But the first one, I actually rated it 3.5. Only 0.5 higher, but it did hook me. Like, And I thought I was going to really be interested in the series. And to be honest, I would have if it wasn't 6 books long. But that is my review of the first half of the Plated Prisoners series by Raven Kennedy. Now, even though it sounds like I hated it, I didn't hate it. I get bored very easily, I'll give them that. But I still think you should read it if it's somewhat interested you at all. Give it a shot.